You've come with the entire file. Just in case. Just in case. Just in case. That works.
It looks
very
heavy.
Well. It's a heavy one.
Yeah.
It's 4.2 trillion.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
That's what it looks like.
That's what it looks like.
Okay. Condensed.
That is a very good context for today's quote.
It is. It is. Today's quote is by somebody called John Adams, who was a vice president many years ago in the US. And he said, facts are stubborn things. Facts are stubborn things. You agree?
I agree. Yeah, facts are stubborn. You can't do much to change them. You just have to accept them.
Yep.
The way it is the way it is.
Yes.
The way it is the way it is.
We used to call them Wiswick. What you see is what you get.
What you see is what you get.
All right.
That's a very good one.
So what are we looking at?
What? 4 trillion shillings?
4.239 or 4.24 trillion shillings.
4.24 trillion shillings
Yes.
is how much you're proposing to spend in the next financial year beginning 1st of July.
1st of July to 30th June 2026.
Next year.
Yes.
You know, for context, many people know 1,000, 3 zeros, million, 6 zeros, a billion is 9 zeros, trillion is how many zeros?
More than maybe even 12, you know?
What?
Yes.
The other day you contextualized it for us and told us 1 trillion shillings is how many millions? Is 1,000
1,000 billions.
Billions.
Yes,
So it's a
1,000
million.
billions.
A million millions.
Yes.
A million millions, correct.
1 million millions
Yes.
is a trillion. We are going to spend 4 of those,
Yes.
plus some 240 billion extra. That's a lot of money, PS.
Yes, but for a larger population, now more than 50 million.
Okay.
Yes.
When we talk about such figures,
Yes.
the first thing that people ask themselves is, so how does that money come to benefit me? Where is it coming to touch me versus what I see as what we call government largesse? And let me put it in context. And you remember last year, as people were protesting against the raising of taxes, the proposed raising of taxes, people were saying, we don't feel the effect of the taxes that we are paying. We are seeing a lot more of expenditure going to heavy offices in government. We are seeing new vehicles being bought every new month by government officials. We are seeing them, suddenly somebody who's my neighbor and he was just driving in a small car, he's driving in many cars. In fact, he's flying in for a small meeting and going back to Nairobi. That this is where the money is going. Debunk that.
These are legitimate questions, and we encourage Kenyans to continue asking, because they pay taxes, and therefore those taxes must be accounted for. So they are very legitimate questions, and I think we have been a listening government since last year. If you look at this budget, it's a budget that responds very much to the voices of the people of Kenya. When they spoke last year, you can see the finance bill that we have prepared is one that responds to what they said. And so I want to assure you that even as we sit at the National Treasury together with our team, working together with the rest of government, we try as much as possible to listen and work also within the constraints, because it's a very tough balancing act from where I sit. Because on one hand, there's a heavy conversation around expenditure. Virtually everybody who calls me wants a budget, or calls my minister, or seeks a treasurer, they want budget, money. The needs are unlimited, but the resources to finance those needs are limited. So if we put it in context, and I think the best time to start is 2010. From the time we adopted a new constitution, we got a liberal constitution. We got 2 bicameral parliament, Senate, National Assembly. We got independent offices, all of the commissions. Then we have 47 counties with the governors and staff and all that. Then you have the national government. Then in that same constitution, there are many rights. Freedom of education, freedom of health, and all these rights have to be provided. But they cannot be provided instantly. They have to be progressively provided. Just when I came in here, you were reading something that I think some of the nurses are planning to demonstrate. those rights are in our constitution, and they have a right to demonstrate. They need money. They need to be paid. But where are the resources? The problem is that we have never had a conversation that is looking at all sides. So if we look at from 2010 up to now, we have never managed to balance our expenditures with our revenues. On the contrary, over the last 12 years or so, there has been like a divergence. Revenues have not grown more than as much as expenditures have grown. So how have we balanced? Because if you don't raise taxes or other non-tax measures to match the expenditures that you have planned, then you have to borrow. And this is the scenario we have been. We started borrowing, and in 2013, our debt carrying capacity as a country was rated high, or our risk of debt default was rated very low. By 2018, that rating had changed to medium. By 2020, the rating had become high risk of debt default, which means debt vulnerabilities were becoming a problem.
In just 7 years.
Yes, so the conversation changes, because even as we come in now, you don't have the room to continue borrowing because there is no space to do it. So this is why in 2021, we entered into the IMF program. And in that IMF program, the main objective was to address debt vulnerabilities. We call it fiscal consolidation. I heard you say you don't like such big words. I don't know how best to put it. But what that means is we are trying to address the problem of debt by making sure that as we finance our budget, we as much as possible use our own resources instead of borrowing. Or if we borrow in what we call what is sustainable. Right. Because that debt sustainability is key. So we got into that program, and we were calling it revenue-driven fiscal consolidation, meaning we needed really to focus on revenues, much as there are issues on expenditure. And this is a background of why you have seen a lot of effort and focus on tax-raising measures. Right. That's the background. And that's why from the last 2.5 years, we've seen us first, I think 2022, 23, tax measures were put in place. We were hoping to raise 216 billion in that. Then last year,
extra 216.
Yes. Then last year, we were aiming to raise 344 billion. But you know, Kenyans spoke, and they said no. We had to. The president decided not to assent that bill because he listened to what the people said. And what happened? We had to go back to Parliament to revise the budget. That we call the supplementary one, but it's actually not supplementary one because we had not spent. You know, you do a supplementary only when you have spent, and then along the way the books are not balancing. So you go back to Parliament. But so we went to Parliament to rationalize, given that now we lost the 344, and we could not cut everything because you know if we cut now by the equivalent of 344, it means we could not provide education, health, you know, basic services that Kenyans need. So what we ended up was to 50-50, take more debt, and then reduce the expenditure by almost 170 billion. This is a space most government institutions have ever been because it was a very tight period where they did not get enough of what they wanted. But in December, at least we still were able to go back to Parliament with new measures, tax amendment bills, tax procedures bills, and business amendment laws. They were passed by Parliament, and of course, that has given us new yields.
It gave you room to raise a bit of the money that you initially wanted to raise, that Kenyans said, no, we don't want to give you this money.
Yes.
So you found another route of going to get Parliament to give you that money.
Well, you know, laws are always there. The Parliament is there continuously. Even now as we speak, there's this law, there's that law. Some laws, like the business amendment laws, never gave us yields. In fact, on the contrary, we were giving a lot of incentives to address the business environment. So it doesn't mean every time you go, and this is what we need to remove from Kenyans, that every time you come up with tax measures, it's about increasing tax measures. If you read our national tax policy and our medium-term revenue strategy, Our desire actually is to expand the tax base and get everybody, increase compliance, so that those who are in the tax base are compliant, those who are not in the tax base are brought in, and with time, we want actually to lower. If you look at it, we are saying we want VAT to come down, we want income tax to come down. It's never the intention that you raise, because raising does not necessarily mean you raise more taxes. In fact, if you lower and everybody's there, there's some what we call disposable income. From what you raise as disposable income, that gets into consumption. And you can still get back.
I still want to get back. At some point, we'll get back to the first question Eric posed was really breaking it down so that it makes sense to somebody at an individual level. Let me ask something that might be a bit, I don't know if the word is amateur, but you have to admit the optics look really bad when there's a prioritization on refurbishment of State House vis-a-vis lack of capitation funds. So I'm just trying to understand, a Kenyan who's reading the paper, and they look at the headlines and it says, this number of hundreds of millions are being spent on refurbishing State House, on what Eric said, buying new cars, etc. And yet you're saying we're tightening our belts. So again, I'm asking this as somebody who is just waking up every day as a Kenyan, struggling to make ends meet, knowing and understanding there's a finance bill that is coming out that might, again, tax them further. You'll speak to it. And yet, even as the government speaks to saying, we are cutting down our spending, we're prioritizing certain sectors, the headline that greets me says the exact opposite. So speak to me whether we're the ones who are misunderstanding the math. Maybe it's not as bad as it looks, or is it?
Yes, I think probably you're the word misunderstanding, because I think we tend to highlight things that are very sensational. But actually, let's break down this budget. Yeah, let's break down. We have a budget of 4.24 trillion. In fact, let me just use the correct number. Yeah, 4.2399. So to make it simple, let's call it 4.24 for the purpose of this discussion. In this budget, we have national government is going to get 2.497. That is 60%. 60% of this budget is going to national government. Then 9% is going to counties. 31% is going to be used to pay debt. We call it consolidated fund services. So this is payments of our debt, interest payments, together with the pension. You can see
this is only
that
interest.
The interest only. And in fact, in this budget, we are talking about 1 trillion. Of the 4 trillion, 1 trillion is going to pay debt. And this is, for me, and that's why when I know you'll come back to about liquidity. Whenever we have a debt to pay, our first charge is to honor that debt. And we have that reputation which we want to protect, because we borrowed. It doesn't matter who borrowed. It's government of Kenya. And we must make sure we pay. And that is why we have budget. So you can see already 31% is gone.
On interest alone.
Yeah, on interest alone. And plus of that is, you have also, I can break for you how much it is for
some pension.
Pension. It is 1.337. Out of this is about 240 billion that goes to pension. The balance is interest. You're almost talking about 1.1 trillion is interest payments. The balance is interest. So those are statutory payments. You budget, you must pay for them. And by the way, because of the actions we have taken to stabilize the economy, we are paying now less. If we were in a situation like we were 2 years ago, we would be talking about almost 1.6 or 1.7 when the exchange rate was around 160 shillings per dollar. Now, things are much better because we have stabilized the shilling. But I'll come back to it. Now, the next is, so in this national government budget, we have executive. The executive takes a chunk of it, 58%. Parliament takes 1%. And the judiciary takes 0.6%. So that's the breakdown. Now, when we go to national government, we can now talk about how we have budgeted the amount that we have taken. And I think I could give you the breakdown if you want to see. We have allocated this amount. We have allocated to agriculture rural and urban development, we have 78 billion.
Agriculture?
Rural and urban development. Yes. This just by sector, but I could give you projects where you want, maybe how much does it go for fertilizer or whatever you are interested. Then energy, what we call infrastructure. That is infrastructure, roads, ICT, energy, all this is going to around 5 or 1 billion. You know, this is the main, it takes a lot of money. Then there is a sector which is, we call general economic and commercial affairs. This is mainly trade, business sectors. That's 47 billion. The Ministry of Health takes 136 billion. Then education is the one that takes the most amount, 701 billion. And this is one budget line we need to monitor because it's really growing very fast. I don't think even now we are provided enough for what they require.
701 billion shillings.
Yes.
It's for
teachers.
It's for hiring teachers.
Yes, yes.
It's also for capitation.
Yes, for capitation.
For basic education, that's primary and secondary.
Yes.
It's also going to universities and colleges.
Yes. Actually, it is for teacher salary, capitation of free day, secondary. Of teachers, actually of that amount of 701, 377 billion goes to teachers' salary.
Over half.
Yeah, 55 billion goes to capitation for free day, secondary. 41 billion goes to higher education, loans board. 31 billion goes to capitation for junior secondary. That's the JSS. JSS. Then 17 billion goes to university education scholarships. 7.9 billion for capitation of primary education. 7.2 for intern teachers. And 5.2 for TVET capitation. Then school feeding program, we have 3 billion. And TVET scholarships, 2.5 billion. And 1.6 for capacity building of teachers for CBE. So you can see these are crucial, very important areas for the education sector.
Yes.
And I can tell you, it's not enough given the rising population. Next year we are going to have another almost 1 million children coming to school, and we must provide for them. And this is a basic right in the Constitution. So and this is also an area we have to really think how best to address going forward.
Right.
For health sector, for instance, just because that's an important area, we have 136.8 billion, and we have budgeted 13 billion for primary health fund. 10 billion for emergency, chronic, and critical illness fund, 4 billion for doctors, interns, 4 billion for HC workers, 4.6 for vaccines and immunization program, 3.8 billion for reproductive, maternal, neonatal, child, and adolescent health project, 3.2 for community health promoters, and 1.75 for salary arrears for doctors. I think you have had those who have been demonstrating. Yeah, so we have tried to listen, but
does that,
this is not
what you've just read doesn't add up. Does it add up to 136?
No, we have just highlight.
What is the biggest chunk in the health docket?
You see, the rest of the amounts now goes to.
They're smaller.
No, it goes to, you know, we have the health ministries a lot. It goes to several institutions, KMTC, colleges, you know, and I have the detail which I can give you.
What is the biggest, for example, for education?
Like Kenyatta National Hospital, here is getting about 18 billion. Cambridge, 10 billion. We have another breakdown of details, yes, that goes to different institutions in the health sector.
Okay.
So if I was just to tell you, if we break down, we get 2 trillion that goes to what we call key allocations for thematic areas that we find important to provide Kenyans with the services they require.
You said key allocations.
Key areas.
Yeah, for key areas like on agriculture and food security, like fertilizer. This time last year we used 14 billion. This time we can only manage 8 billion. But we know this is an area we have done well because food security has gone up. So it's an area we are giving more focus because the more we give more subsidy, fertilizer, you can see it is directly related to more production. And we have never had challenges of imported. Actually, we have never imported. I don't remember giving what we call
subsidy.
No, you know, when you're in import and you forgo taxes, sometimes we have to give exemption or waiver. We have never done that because we have had sufficient quantities. The sugar sector, for instance, is doing very well.
You know, PS, when you look at all those figures, I'm sure when you add up this math, it'll add up to the 2 point, I hope at least, that there's no typo somewhere, it adds up to the entire 4.2399 trillion shillings. Questions always emerge on, are these expenditures actually coming to directly benefit the citizen? Okay? So when you talk about, for example, agriculture getting 78 billion shillings, agriculture is a devolved function. 78 billion shillings are the agriculture, rural and urban development. Those sound like devolved functions. And yet the national government is spending all that money. And people will ask, this is where we start seeing ministry having new cars. This is where we start seeing, you know, the Ministry of Agriculture is still bloated with very many workers working on the
I like the way you focus on cars.
Because those are the optics that depress Kenyans.
It's true, and we are aware. I can tell you.
That's why you're coming to build markets for counties, and that counties want to build markets for themselves, you know, and so on and so forth. Health, when you spend 13 billion for the primary healthcare fund, you could argue that it's now the national fund, 10 billion for emergency chronic, but then you give Kenyatta National Hospital 19 billion.
So some of
this KNH that we have today
is
getting 19 billion shillings, which is, I'm sure, more than the highest getting, the highest receiving level 5. KNH is level 6, 19B, 1. Well, it has one satellite facility in Odaya, but that's it. If you look at that, that's what people ask themselves. Now I am forced to go to KNH. I go to KNH, I'm going for my dialysis, I'm told machine breakdown. I'm going for my cancer treatment, chemo, I'm told no facilities and so on and so forth. Yet 19 billion shillings has been written in the budget that it's going there. Those are the questions that people ask.
I think they are legitimate questions, and we are listening. It's just that, you know, you work within a tight space where sometimes it's very difficult to provide the resources you require, as I indicated. In fact, by the time we went to cabinet, remember we issued a budget policy statement. Our desire was that Parliament, we need a budget of 4.5% of GDP, fiscal deficit. You know, we wanted to limit that. Then Parliament went and there were some changes made because we had not provided for CDF, for instance, because you remember the court had ruled that it is illegal, and we were not too sure now if we don't allocate, if we allocate, we will be flouting a court decision already. But we decided to still give some money, and then we have restored back that money into the budget and a few others. Then there were also new pressures that came. By the time we went to cabinet, we were talking of a budget of almost 5.4% of GDP. But cabinet said, no, we must still stick to the original idea of fiscal consolidation. Go back and revise this budget. And cabinet directed, we went back, and I can tell you what cabinet told us. We were told to go back and cut spending. And because, first of all, our revenues have tended to be over-projected all the time, because we have set, that's
a very mild way of putting it.
Yes.
But okay, go ahead.
No, so we have also seen that we have to be realistic. So we actually we lowered the threshold for the ordinary revenues. This time around, we have come to around 2.7 trillion instead of the 2.9 that we had. We have really come down to around 2.7. So having lowered the threshold, the target on revenues, and you still have this high expenditure, what do? We had to cut back the budget significantly. So I have here where areas we managed to rationalize on the recurrent budget. We looked at and we said, across government, an item called communication supplies and services, you cut by 25%.
What's that?
That is communication supplies and services. You know, there are things that are not important, except internet. Because we have said we have cut domestic travel and subsistence and other transportation costs by 25%. So if you are not traveling, you also still must use virtual meetings and all that. So we must make sure internet is working. So that we didn't touch budget for making sure there is connectivity.
Can you pause there, because I know we have about a minute to the break, because I think you're breaking it down in a way that helps, and there's a few people who also have questions. Maurice Andati is saying, what are the estimations for county collections? What will they cover to help support the government in funding these services? I want to know how much is being used to building the manufacturing sector. So we'll see whether we're able to also get to some of the questions that people are asking. But it's 7:30. We'll be right back on Fixing the Nation.
To share. I've got a lot of questions on social media, but even before we get to that, and when PS, I know we interrupted you as you were doing the breakdown, but by and large, I think and we'll continue with the breakdown, people can agree that this budget doesn't, it doesn't seem, the finance bill, doesn't seem punitive. There's nothing that is, incredibly painful, or, punitive is actually the best word to use. That seems to be agreed, right? That's not an issue. But last year, after the rejection of the finance bill, we saw a sneaky new way of bringing in the finance bill. The tax amendment laws that you've talked about, tax procedures, all of those, introducing things that were in the finance bill, the significant economic present tax for one, capital gains reduction, withholding tax on government supplies, and other things that were in the finance bill that found their way back with these amendments to the laws much later in the year. Are we going to see the same thing? Because as we celebrate here and say, yes, John Buddy came on Fixing the Nation, he promised this year's bill will not be punitive, he has kept his promise. Are we celebrating too early? Because 2 months, 3 months from now, we'll have another tax amendment law, something sneaky to just bring in some raft of taxation.
Niseme kwanza, kulipa ushuru, ni kujitegemea. Just to add to what you said earlier. But I think we often say you don't throw away the baby
with the bathwater.
That's what we did when we did not sign into law the finance bill, because that finance bill did not necessarily have bad things. There were some good things in that finance bill, and I think my cabinet secretary actually mentioned. And we said, let's get back some things that may have been lost. But we're also more interested in business amendment. Remember, business amendment laws are not necessarily tax-raising measures. So we're also trying to make sure we address issues that will help to improve the business environment. But we also follow the procedure. In fact, this time around, we did an explainer. We went public in all newspapers. We explained what we are taking to Parliament, so that there is no, sometimes people say Parliament has done this. We wanted to distinguish what is it Parliament has added and what has come from National Treasury. That we did the explainer. We gave the public the opportunity. We actually went around with my CS, even and myself. We went to public forums. We came to Givenchy and other areas, and we got feedback. Whatever we presented is as a result of feedback from Kenyans. And we submitted. It also went through Parliament. Parliament also went through public participation. Just like today, I've seen in your newspaper, you have carried an advert from Parliament about the finance bill. And, going public. I encourage the public, use that opportunity. You have your Parliament, that's lawmaking, it has a role. Even us in Treasury still give us views when we have a way of still giving feedback. But what I just want to say is that I want to urge Kenyans that we really need to balance this conversation. Yes, ask how the taxes have been used. But let's not have a negative attitude toward paying taxes. Because that is a legitimate thing we must do.
In fact, I don't think we've not answered the question.
Which one?
The question was, last year we rejected the finance bill, fine, but a lot of its provisions were brought back through other bills later in the year. Is the same going to happen this year? We're getting a tax amendment law or tax procedures law, something similar.
No, I thought I've answered that it's not everything was brought back through the back door. I've just said a few of them, you need to see what is it that came. Things like significant economic tax, significant economic presence tax, replacing it with digital tax, what we call a digital service tax. It's a good thing. It brings in more equity. It does not touch most Kenyans. It's targeting non-residents who are operating in our jurisdiction, providing service to us, and we're just saying instead of paying 1.5% of the revenue, We are saying take 10% of the revenue from that jurisdiction and then tax 30% out of it.
Yeah,
I think that is not to say.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
So what is what is your problem?
My question is whether we will see additional taxes being introduced through other legislation aside from this bill.
No, I think.
Are you going to close your budget proposals by June this year
and not add
start
anything?
running your budget with how much has been approved, or are
That
you
is our
going to
intention.
come later and say, by the way, tunaweza ongeza some 200 billion?
Okay, that is our expectation. We always go to Parliament without the intention to even do a supplementary, because supplementary is a response to some changed circumstances that you have to deal with. I cannot predict the future, but it's our desire that whatever we are presented, we implement. And it is good for us. We don't have to struggle, because every time we have supplementary is also and there's so much pressure. You know, everybody wants this and that. Yet it is the pressure is coming more on spending, and I don't know why you are not asking that. Why are you not asking also the increase in expenditure that is coming? I wish I could share with you on, like, we have not factored in almost $1 trillion of requests that need funding, but which we could not, because we are sensitive that they are, you know, Wakenya wamesema hawataki kulipa more, you know, so I
don't know that Kenyans have a problem with paying tax, and I feel like we've said this for the past year. I think the issue is how that tax works for people. The breaks.
That's why
I think it's wrong to say Kenyans have a problem with paying tax. It's never
because
been about
as your line
that.
of questioning, I could feel like you are asking, are you going to bring in? I think they should be legitimate if there is a rationale to really bring in a policy or a tax measure that will help raise revenues for this country. I think Kenya should welcome, surely, because these people who are demonstrating this morning, I'm sure they are also sympathizing with them. Yeah. You would like us to listen to them. But for us to pay them, we must raise some money. And we have to balance. Do we take more debt? I can tell you where we have come from now. Debt service is becoming a problem. And by the way, I wish you started with the history, because I needed to tell you where we have come from. Because I think that we have made very good progress. We have actually fixed the nation to a large extent on the macro front. And it would be good for Kenyans to know, but let me not disrupt the line of thought that you had. If you have the chance, I can come back to it later. But just to say, I go back to where I was. We were told to rationalize the budget. So we are addressing the same issues Kenyans are saying. Do you need to be traveling, foreign travel? Can we not use our embassies, for instance, to represent us? So we have said foreign travel and subsistence and other costs should be cut by 50%. Not 25, but domestic we have
across board.
Across board.
Okay.
Except there are exceptions. Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Trade, Ministry of East African Community, because by nature that's their work. If you tell them you are not traveling, it means you just pay salaries, and that's counterproductive. So there are exemptions. We just don't do blanket. There are areas also that suffer in this case.
Can I ask a more direct question?
Yes.
So, because now we are looking at those numbers.
Yeah.
How much money is going to the executive office of the president? And what is it for? Is the executive office of the president inclusive of the DP's office?
Yes.
According to session of paper number 1 of 2020, it is, right?
Yeah, but
not session of paper, but executive order. It is.
Yeah, I wish I.
Oh, but have you separated them?
I didn't bring with me the vote book that can tell us who has what. Unfortunately,
but at least you have the breakdown.
I can only give you breakdown on the key thematic areas. I think that can be available online.
Because the question where I'm leading with this question is, when Kenyans were speaking last year, they were saying we do not want to see this largesse in government.
Right.
Because it appeared we are raising money to fund lifestyles. And the president agreed. And the president spoke and said, I am no longer going to allow the funding of some offices. Spouse of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, spouse of the Deputy President, the First Lady's office, we're going to minimize its operations. The number of advisors that we have, we're also going to cut them, did he say by 50%? If I remember him correctly. We have seen an increase in the number of advisors to the president. We are still seeing expenditures ballooning in that sector. We are seeing expenditures that have been included on, refurbishing an office here, refurbishing the deputy president's office. One deputy president leaves curtain, a new deputy president comes, puts in new curtains.
Okay. For example, State House receiving an additional 3.8 billion shillings. That is not critical expenditure.
No.
To have what? Personal emoluments, domestic travel, car maintenance, operational expenses. That doesn't sound
let me
like
just
austerity.
say this. I wish I had come with the vote book so we can look at all those allocations. Next time I'll make sure I come. But if I just go back to what I was saying, areas we cut, like routine maintenance for vehicles and transport equipment, routine maintenance for other assets. It's not that we have said no refurbishment. We have just scaled down. But we have scaled down by no. That's not. If I remember the budget, it could be less than $1 billion for the offices you are talking about. I don't think it is
for
the
State
figure.
House.
Yes, I don't think that's the figure. I wish I have it here. But the point is, even State House suffered budget cuts. These budget cuts which I have here, given what they initially had and what they have now, they have also suffered the cuts in accordance with the formula that we used to cut across government. So they have not been spared.
2.3 billion for facelift. Ruto's office gets 2.3 billion. Carry on.
Was that a misreporting?
Maybe it's a misreporting because I need to check the figures. That's not true. It could be around 800, something like that.
800 million for a facelift of the office.
No, it's just for the office for the executive office of the president.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can also see the same in other government.
What is refurbishment?
Refurbishment is it's just like this building now. If you feel like it is not serving you well, it could be leaking. What do? Do you continue staying in a leaking roof?
No.
Yes. So you have to address.
So it's those ones.
Yes.
A tile comes out, you replace the tile.
So
toilet handle breaks.
Actually, I want to urge you.
800 million shillings, PS, is a lot of money.
No,
if you look at how much money we are spending on education, and I wrote it here, 7.1 billion shillings is going to capitation for free primary education. That is 6 classes, 6 million children, 7 billion shillings. The executive office of the president is getting half of this is going to the presidency. And that's why Kenyans ask, so when we see all these vehicles, when we see this every new 2 weeks, there's an appointment to an advisor to the advisor and a PA to the advisor of the president in the executive office of the this and the other, that's where Kenyans ask the questions. Should we not be reducing? Because we have a public service that we pay to work in public service. Why does the president need a PA for an advisor of the executive of the president of the...
I think maybe we need time also to look at how we have dealt with this matter of reduction and how we have kept the promises. For instance, I think your nation covered one time, I don't know how you got it, but an internal memo I issued to my staff about cuts. And I thought it was good. I was wondering how you got it, but it was good that you highlighted because I did institute at my level measures to cut expenditure. For instance, travel. I said if you are going to Mombasa, except if you are a PS, maybe CS and senior staff who require to be there, the rest SGR. Yeah.
So the rest SGR.
So we are able to cut back. So every accounting officer has also been encouraged to try and really live within the means. Live within the means. So
I do hear you.
Yes.
I think our question is it's happening at some levels, but not at others. Because and again, happy to be wrong, but from different sources, Supplementary Budget 2025 gave an additional 3.8 billion to State House's budget from 4.3 to 8.1. True or false? Austerity is for the people in your office who now take the SGR instead of a flight, but it's not for the executive.
I think we need to look at it in a much broader context. I think probably it's not that the things which were said last year have changed now. We still don't have allocations to certain key officers. like the first ladies, we lost a number of staff, but it took time. You don't exit quickly because if you have staff already existing, it's like what we are doing now at the mergers. We are merging 42 entities or state corporations into 18 or 20 actually. That merger cannot take place in one go. It will take time. The staff that exist must still continue being in the payroll for a while until you find a mechanism to exit them out. Yeah, so it's not like when we said we are going to reduce, it would be just quick. But it is the spirit is there that we want to rationalize. And I want to tell you one area that we really, is a major reform that we are going to save, and I think Kenyans should pay attention to. We are asking everybody, every ministry, department, and agency to move to electronic platform for procurement and disposal of assets of government. Beginning 1st July. And we started rolling out the pilot this April with a number of MDS with 3 counties that are there, Busia, Makueni, and I think Elgeyo Marakwet. Then we have a number of entities, some regulators and the rest. We are now training everybody. All suppliers who want to deal with government must register on the portal. You will not do any business with government in the manner we have been doing. You will have to do it, you bid online. So the era of voluminous bid documents, where you have to go, bind them, go and bid, and maybe you have to look at pagination, those are going to be gone. And every supplier must be compliant. We will link every supplier. If you have any compliance certificate, you will be linked to KRA, to your bank. So there is no monkey business where you go to see River Road and print some bank statement and come and use to bid, or get some fake tax compliance certificate. Then, so transaction costs are going to be really low. Then for us in government, we're also going to avoid these situations where we're dealing with voluminous documents, transactions are going to be low. Everything will be on electronic platform. So it's going to bring in transparency, accountability, and there will be reduction in costs. In fact, countries that have done this e-procurement have achieved between 10 and 15% reduction in cost. So of this 4.2 trillion, procurable items are around 2.5 trillion. If we force everybody, and we are going to be fighting because there are those who might resist, because it's not going to be an easy space for those who have never wanted to do things proper. We will raise about 250 billion if you just take 10%. 250 billion is already reducing 4.2 to 4 trillion. That is working on the expenditure side. And it's actually bringing in the accountability that Kenyans are asking. How are our taxes being used? You can see online. And then items like this that are overpriced. I told you one time, I think I've used this before when I was being interviewed for this job. I think there was a time I was flying to Mombasa and I said I need a ticket. So I got my ticket, and I also had a family member. But what I paid to my family member is very different from what was paid by government. And yet it was
Which one was
legit.
Higher?
Mine was higher. So the procurement of goods tends to be overpriced. And that's a fact. So if we all go into this situation where there is transparency, you all bid, you know what is who is selling what, and all the bidders bid, we expect prices to come down. And this is the only way we can achieve more savings than you focusing on maybe 1 or 2 offices that, I know it's legitimate and they're supposed to, but I'm just trying to tell you there are more reforms. We're also moving away from cash accounting to accrual accounting. So by 1st July, every financial statement will now be reflected as accrual, meaning we recognize expenditures when they are incurred. It's not when they are paid, because that's cash accounting. So these pending bills that you sometimes we have had the problem of not knowing how much we have will be a thing of the past. It must be in the books. And then we are working now to clean up the past in terms of pending bills. We have this pending bills committee that we put up, and they have done good work. So far, they have verified about 500 billion worth of the 674. Of that 500, they have recommended 229 billion for payment.
Can we come back and
Have
talk
you
about
have you
that?
factored that in this
Yeah,
budget?
okay, I'll come back to you now.
Okay, because I'd like to know whether we are going to get the 230 billion shillings going to pay people who are owed, and why Dr. Ouko was recommending just that 230 if he has verified over 500 million.
Yes.
Also, it's good to understand that, and how long it's going to take for him to verify the other 200 million. So, Dr. Chris Kiptoo is our guest this morning. He's the Principal Secretary of the National Treasury. We are discussing the budget. The budget for the next financial year that has been presented before Parliament is 4.399 trillion shillings. A trillion is 12 zeros. Let's take a break. We'll be back shortly and ask more questions about this. Treasury, Dr. Chris Kiptoo, PhD, not honorary doctor. He earned it. He has a PhD in international macroeconomics and finance specialization. So, and he went to Iten, St. Patrick's Iten. That's where the math came in. Huh?
The school.
That's it. Huh? So you and very many other people, PS, at the National Treasury, understand matters of public finance management. You worked at the IMF and all. We have heard politicians speak about matters of our finance. One politician who was a minister in the Treasury, then President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the current Treasury CS, they have said 2 billion shillings is lost every day on corruption. Is this true?
I can't speak to that because I have no evidence.
Is there money that's lost through corruption?
I mean,
and to such a high magnitude,
I think
700 billion shillings a year.
I don't have that figure, and I cannot speak in that way. The only thing is that yes, we acknowledge corruption exists, and we are putting in measures to deal with them. And you can see we have been making efforts in the last 2 budgets to strengthen governance institutions. We have given more of a budget to EACC, more budget to DPP, more budget to judiciary. We have been having engagements even with the Chief Justice. Personally, I've engaged her with her team and working together because judiciary is part of government and they have a role to play. So, and then strengthening other security agencies, that's the only way to deal with it. And even us at the forefront, recently we even engaged IMF, for instance. We told them to do a governance diagnostic mission. And they are coming in June. To, as an outsider, they can also be able to see how our system are, the vulnerabilities of corruption, and ways to deal with them. But I cannot put the figure at this point.
Is it a concern to the technocrats at the National Treasury when an amount about 730 billion shillings per year, more than the education budget of 701 billion shillings, could be getting lost through corruption? These are 2 people who have sat at the helm of the National Treasury who have said it. Uhuru Kenyatta was once a minister in the Treasury. John Mbadi is currently a minister in the Treasury. They have said it.
I have said we acknowledge corruption exists when we are taking measures to deal with them. The only thing is that I don't have figures. I cannot say this is how much. And, they may have had more information than I have. But the thing is,
as an expert, as an expert in finance and international macroeconomics to a PhD level, when you're preparing a budget and then you're doing the budget implementation reports is it every quarter that you present to Parliament?
Yes, and the budget calendar has also, you have budget formulation, budget execution, budget audit, the audit process, and the auditor has his own role. As
the PS in charge, because you're also the one who's signing off the money, and you're preparing reports to take to Parliament. We asked for this is how much you've spent so far. Are there red flags that you see?
Yes.
As you're
and we
signing off?
I even
are they
order
to the tune of over 700 billion?
You see, we have to get those cases because they defend. Sometimes you get a report and you have to get the right agency to do it. We have our own internal auditor. We have internal auditor general where sometimes I have had to issue instructions. There's this report, go and do an audit. And we do many of such. If you need, I can provide. So yes, we get red flags and we take action. Sometimes we also deal with the investigative agencies where it requires. But we also call for special audit from the Auditor General, and her office has been very responsive. So I think that's how I can respond. But yes, we believe in taking measures that will really result in permanent elimination of corruption. For instance, this issue of e-procurement, which I said is a key reform, which we know if we did it and bring everything on the key platform, there will be more transparency, more accountability, and this is the only way to really reduce that kind of corruption. It can't be the only one, of course, but I think it's going to contribute to a large extent. And then the other reforms we are talking about, including, for instance, now we are working on a single treasury account, and then we are talking about zero-based budgeting, because we believe it is not fair to just pick up from the previous. If a ministry had 10 billion, you add. That incremental addition is not useful. You need to really look at it. And there are areas, by the way, we are also working on like to address stalled projects. There are some projects that are stalled, and this is why the policy is really don't start a new project before you complete an existing one.
Is there a public real-time tracker for, and I think we've asked this before, I don't even think it's available, but a public real-time tracker where people can track all this expenditure? Where the public can track expenditure of the government.
Maybe it's an area, as we go digital, probably those are areas we can also do. But at the Treasury, I'm working on even a digital platform to check on profile, how projects are doing. All donor-funded projects, where are they, what's the problem, we're able to monitor. And it's something that once it's ready and we are able to share with the public, we would like. Because I think I told you earlier, we are a very transparent country. If you look at all documents for National Treasury, you can avail them on National Treasury website. Our debt register, whatever we have here, the budget statement, everything is there.
Will Treasury release, for example, the IMF and World Bank agreements?
No, but you know, it depends on the agreements that have been signed, because there are also some non-disclosure. You know, I don't know what it is, but most of them are available. And IMF itself or World Bank will always put also on their side, because they are transparent. If they are on a mission, they will put on their website what it is that they have done in Kenya. We're in a world of accountability. So I was actually telling you about the pending bills.
Sorry, just before we go into the pending bills, will the IMF report be made public? This is a question from Maurice Andati.
Yes, let me...
You said you've asked them to do
yes. This is how it's going to happen. We agreed with the IMF recently that we don't finish the 9th review because the time was short. So we said we have a new program. And even if we have a new program, we want them to do governance diagnostics. So there's a mission coming in June. They will finish their mission and then go and prepare the report and publish in October. So it will be a public document that will be published to show what they found about our system. And because we are the ones who invited them to say, come, sometimes, you know, we've been talking about corruption. Let's see, what are these corruption vulnerabilities? Let them also tell us. So it's looking at areas of fiscal governance, central bank independence, financial sector, areas of audit, or areas of rule of law, for instance, and then AML, that's anti-money laundering, and the counter-terrorism financing and all that area, just to check. And as I said, we also now working hard to get out of grey listing. You know, we were grey listed.
Yes.
And there are many reforms we are carrying out to get out of grey listing. So let me tell Kenyans that I think very good progress is happening in their country. They just don't realize, but there is so much progress to improve governance, to improve our institutions, to improve accountability and transparency. And I encourage them to still continue asking those questions, but still looking at everything in a holistic manner. So I don't know whether I can go back to my
pending bills.
So Edward Ouko and his team have done fairly a good job. They are remaining with about 150 billion, which they actually went to look at in the last 2 weeks. They were on a retreat. So I'm expecting them to bring a report for me and CS this week. And then whatever there is remaining, we have told them to clear by 30th June. They must completely finish. But so far, they have recommended only 229 because the balance were not properly supported. If they are not supported, then the burden of proof will be on the person who is asking to be paid, because documents, some of them, remember, are fake. Remember, even in the time of Kibaki, there was also a similar exercise done, but not much was paid. Majority was rejected because it was found not to be fit. This time, everybody took out an oath. The accounting officer, even everybody who is participating was on oath that you don't lie. And if you lie, there will be action taken against you. So what we believe that what has happened is that 229 will be now provided for in the budget. So far, 80 billion of the 229 is for the road sector, and we have started paying. In the road sector, you may have seen that there are now contractors back on site, and you can get more details from the relevant ministry on how that 80 billion has been paid, because I don't have that. But I know contractors have been paid, they're on site, they are now at work. In fact, you will see construction of road sector now being positive in the GDP. If you look at the economic survey, you'll see that there was a negative growth because that sector was basically dead. Now we are restarting. So we also want to pay everybody, especially the hustlers. We looked at all those with below 100 million and below 100 million. 97% of the bills are actually small, medium enterprises, and these are going to be priority. Are they
factored in this budget?
Yes, we have provided for a mechanism to say we have recognized them in our fiscal framework, and we want to settle them, whatever has been determined as payable in this fiscal year of 25-26.
So
and we are also planning
229 billion.
Yes,
at least will be paid this year.
This fiscal year. Next financial year. Then the balance we will also bring back to fiscal framework to make sure it's recognized, because now when you recognize, they become arrears they become like debt, and then you have a mechanism now to extinguish that debt, to pay off the debt. Then we clean up our books. We go to accrual accounting as a new system, and the issue of pending bills will be a thing of the past. And we just work to improve our revenue stream well, manage our debt, because debt is still, as I told you here, a big problem. When we get revenues, the ordinary revenues, that 2.7 trillion ordinary revenues, and you have 1 trillion you are paying, it means you are talking about for every 10 shillings you collect, you are using 3 shillings to pay interest only.
Okay.
So that takes away our fiscal space. And this is why you've seen a lot of measures we have taken to create a fiscal space. For maturing debt that are coming, we have tried to work out on lengthening maturities. Like you saw recently, we went to another Eurobond market, and we were very successful. We were looking for 1.5 billion. We got 4.5 billion instead.
Could you hold that thought,
Yes.
Dr. I think we have a caller on the line. Phil, you said Jeremy from Nairobi. Jeremy, good morning. Do you have a question for Dr. Kiptoo or a contribution you'd like to make to the conversation?
I have a question for the PS.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm asking the PS. After the PS, I have a question because I've been to the streets, and what I do journalism is I do some street interviews. Janet, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do street interviews, and I ask Kenyans about the state of the nation and how they feel. And this week I was waiting for the budget, for the reading of the budget, so that maybe I can get to the street and get to know their views, and people they are familiar with what is happening within the country. But I have one question for the PS. The PS is actually coming, telling us he has done a good job to explain how the money has been allocated to various sectors. But my concern is does the PS my question is this: why should the PS come to tell us that at the expense of the austerity measures of Kenya, what are they doing? Because have they instructed the Kenyans down at the streets? Let me talk to him for him so that he can.
Jeremy, what's the question, Jeremy? What's the question?
The question is, at we know, like the State House, the president has got the advisor, a pool of advisors, and at the expense whatever they are doing, we know the State House being refurbished. They also they are still buying the streets, adding to buy the motorcade and everything at the expense of preaching They're telling us to observe the austerity measure. What are they doing? And the other thing, the thief should not be on the live television telling us that we know that there's budget for corruption. What are they doing first to eliminate these loopholes for corruption?
Okay, I think we get. Thank you, Jeremy. We get the gist of the question. I think the gist of it is you are telling us to tighten our belts, and you continue eating. We are tightening our belts. You are eating.
Yeah. It's the austerity for who question, right? Who's really feeling the pinch? I think, like you said, for some civil servants, the belt has gotten tighter for sure. For Kenyans, the belt is definitely tighter, but for the executive, it doesn't feel the same. So as we do this financial fiscal consolidation, as we ask for reports, why is it not across the board that we're seeing those things? And I know you'll give the numbers of some of places in the executive that receive budget cuts, but again, we've also seen places in the executive receive huge budget increases. So yeah, there's a discrepancy there.
The question will keep coming up because I think again, it comes down to trust. Kenyans can't see past it. If there's a lack of trust, if there's wastage and corruption, as even Jeremy has alluded to, and a lot of our fixers, then they struggle to see past the wastage, even though you're breaking it down. So I think it's speaking to how does this even offer relief for low-income earners, the budget in its totality? So, yeah.
Again, front page of the Business Daily today talks about hundreds of KRA workers moved in 30 billion shilling fraud. So KRA was losing about 2.5 billion shillings from fraudulent VAT claims. That's just on VAT alone. And if we go into income tax, corporate tax, we can imagine how much money we are leaking, bleeding. But
so I think I don't want really to go back into what I said. The thing is, we are taking steps. Yeah. Like that headline now, it shows results of what we are doing. I just want to tell Kenyans, this is a journey. It's not an event. It's a journey, and it is. We are working together. Use also your position. Talk to your member of parliament, to whatever position you have to raise your issue. I will do my part, but you know it's a collective decision for all of us. But I just want to tell Kenyans that much has been done in the last 2 years to fix the economic challenges, and there is progress. Much more can be and will be achieved going forward. And this is why I'm talking about even pending bills. We're sorting them. This is an issue. Most businesses have really suffered. Banks have been having huge and non-performing loans. Now we are saying we will fix it, and we have done it, and we will do it. It's going to be one of the boxes to be ticked. Definitely, we are also working on addressing this monster, which is not necessarily a product of the current regime, which is the heavy debt burden that we have, which we have inherited, but which we cannot say we can't do away with. The reason sometimes we delay even in disbursements to, for instance, the education sector or others, is because when there are heavy maturities coming in, like they were this month, huge amounts of payments to be made, the biggest decision we have to make is that we must protect the reputation of the nation by honoring the obligations we have taken. And then, at least even if there is a delay, we'll have sorted. Like now we have paid off whatever was maturing. Right. And you can imagine what it means to have a debt default to the nation. You will have your pension money gone, your deposits in banks gone. It is going to be a place you don't want to be.
I have a question from a fixer on the matter of debt. The PS is contradicting himself. Why is the government still raising money through Eurobonds instead of the concessional debt, and yet he's complaining about increasing interest repayment? So he said, yeah, we went to the market for 1.5, came back with 4.5. At a time when we're trying to go more concessional, better debt, more longer-term debt.
No, I think it is because this debt issue is more complex than that listener or viewer has understood. Because debt has two components. There's domestic debt, there's external debt. For domestic debt, it can be in form of treasury bills or treasury bonds. Our strategy is to go long-term. So we go for bonds. So majority of our domestic debt is in bonds, less in treasury bills. Then for external, we have multilateral, bilateral, and market-based, what we call commercial. So in this, you have Multilateral, we have World Bank, IMF, which are concessional. It's our desire to be in that space. But we can't get everything concessional. Bilateral is also available. Countries like China is a big lender to us, Germany and others, where we also get bilateral loans. And then we also go to market to get like the Eurobond. And like we are thinking of Panda bond or Samurai bond.
Samurai bond.
Yeah. So all these are available. What I said earlier is that in order to create the fiscal space, because you have maturing obligations coming in, and maybe I can give an example. The famous 2024 June Eurobond of 2 billion, which was taken in June 2014. 10 years later, everybody feared that we were not going to settle.
Yeah.
And you know that fear really manifested itself in the market. You could see exchange rate really went because many people were holding foreign exchange. I remember the oil marketers coming to my office asking to talk to Governor Central Bank to see if we can release some dollars. Oil marketers were forced to open up to 20 banks trying to get enough dollars because they were not getting. We had foreign exchange, parallel exchange markets because the real fear was there that we would not settle. But you know, one of the proudest things that I'm very proud of having been a treasurer at that time is the fact that we took a decision that really helped fix that problem. When we decided to issue, we went to look for an advisor. We advertised for a position of an advisor on this matter of Eurobond. Then we got 16 firms that came in. We evaluated them. We got 6. Out of the 6, we got 2. That is Stanbic and Citibank, who helped us to do the liability management. And then the market, you know, had been closed. They advised us that now the market is open. And we went to market. The investors showed a lot of hope, the confidence in Kenyan economy. We got oversubscription of four times. We got 6 billion when we were looking for 1.5 billion of the 2 billion, because we already had secured money from World Bank to settle. We had other ways to settle because we were going to settle either through IMF or World Bank. But the market opened. So what we did, it was a neutral. We issued and bought back. And that got many people flat-footed because no dollars came to Kenya. We were able to settle, and you know, liability manage that debt now is going to be paid in 2030, 2031, 32. Then what happened? People found themselves in a situation where they had too much dollars. There was no market because the government could not be available. The shilling, you can see how the shilling has come down. It started coming down, of course, complemented by actions taken by central bank, monetary policy action. Inflation has come down from 9.6. Today we are talking about 3.6. In fact, it had come down to 2.7. And this is real. The consumer price index, you can check that there is cost of living. Yeah, cost. Facts. And I said facts are stubborn. Cost of living has been addressed. Over the same period, what happened to our foreign exchange? We had below 4 months of import cover at that time. In the last, from February last year up to today, our reserves have grown from 6 billion to now almost $10 billion. Almost 5 months of import cover. In fact, that's why we say even if we don't get financing, we know we have buffers for external shocks. Our exports are doing well, growing at 10%. Our remittances are doing well. Interest rates have come down. You have seen that. And this is reflected in the Treasury bills. The auction this week, last Thursday, because every Thursday we get the auction, our Treasury bills were going at 8.5. 1 year later, earlier it was 16%. So in terms of payment, we are paying half. So that's why that 1 trillion that is in the budget would have been higher if we had not taken this action. So macro stability has been achieved, and this is what you require. If you don't have predictability about the future, it becomes very difficult. So I think that macro stability has been achieved. Now we are also talking about capital markets. You look at capital markets, you see also NSC is doing, the capital markets is doing well. And then our economy is vibrant. It always comes back stronger, even when we have, because it's a diversified economy. Services constitute 55% of the GDP, with agriculture taking almost 23%. And then industry. Industry itself is manufacturing plus mining and the rest. So with this, I just keep saying, let's keep moving, and we fix our economy. We can. You saw the economic survey, how much the private sector is generating. Survey is showing that we have a workforce of about 20 million, 21 actually, with 3.4 being in the formal sector, 3.4 million people. The balance is in the informal sector. And majority, actually the people bearing the greatest brand of paying tax, especially corporate tax and the rest are the formal ones. The majority are informal. That's why we are taking action to reach out to those in the informal sector to bring them into the tax bracket. This is what we call tax-based expansion, through deploying technology and digitization. And this way, we make sure everybody is in the tax bracket. And when we have an expanded tax base, I can assure you the desire to raise tax rates will not be there. It's more to bring down.
When the economy is doing well and okay,
yes,
and people are able to afford their basics and have extra, they have absolutely no problem funding the government to offer them the services. The problem always comes, PS, when I am paying you tax, and I am paying for security, I'm paying for medical, I'm paying for education, I'm paying for water, I'm paying for garbage, I'm paying to just dump my poo. That's where the problem comes.
Yeah.
Please pass on that message to the others in the executive.
We'll
But we thank you.
Yes, and I also ask Kenyans to make sure, even as they make the decision also on who their leaders are, they
Keep that in
give
mind.
us the people that can then deliver what they want. So it is also your decision.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll leave it at
That's a
that.
good point. Think about who you elect in the next election. Dr. Chris Kiptoo, the Principal Secretary in the State Department for the National Treasury. Now I know you have like 3 State Departments, but the PS in the National Treasury has been our guest. Keep it here. After this break, we have a conversation with the former Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Livestock Development, Mithika Linturi. Back in a moment.